You know, there's a certain kind of pain that feels harder to move on from when something ends and you never really get an explanation. Not just because you lost the person, but because you lost the chance to fully understand what happened. And I think that's what makes closure so dangerous to wait upon. Because a lot of people are not stuck on a relationship itself anymore necessarily. They're just stuck on the lack of clarity or the lack of honesty, the lack of the final conversation that would just help everything make sense. Sometimes what keeps you attached is not love, but it's more so confusion that keeps you attached. It's the fact that a piece of your mind is still trying to solve something that your heart never got peace from. And I think a lot of people live there quietly. They keep moving on the outside. You know, they laughing, they at work, they posting, they talking to new people. But deep down, there's still a part of them that's waiting for a text, waiting for the apology or waiting for an explanation, waiting for that one moment that finally helps them let go. But the truth is sometimes that moment is never coming. And that's one of the hardest things to accept because closure feels like relief. It feels like justice. It feels like the one thing that'll help stop your mind from replaying everything. You tell yourself, oh, if they would have just explained it, oh, if we could just have one real conversation, if I could just understand why they move like that, or oh, then I could really move on. But what if I told you that's not true? What if the thing that's keeping you stuck is not actually the lack of closure, but your belief that your healing is supposed to come from the person that hurt you? That's the trap. Because when you wait for closure, bro, what you're really saying is, I still need something from you before I can accept peace. I need your explanation. I need your honesty. I need your accountability. I need you to make this make sense for me. And you know, I get it because sometimes, bro, it's not even about wanting that person back. It's just wanting to know whatever y'all had was actually real. You want to know that you're not crazy for caring about this relationship. You want to know that the way it ended does not erase what it meant. And you also want to know that you're not the only one that was carrying all that emotional weight. That's why closure feels so heavy. Because usually when people say they want closure, what they really mean is, I want this pain to make sense. And that's human. But this is the thing about real life, my brothers. Real life does not always give you a clean ending, bro. Sometimes people shut down instead of speaking up. Sometimes people avoid heavy conversations and walk away because it's easier for them to disappear than to be honest with you. Sometimes they know they owe you clarity and they still choose to not give it to you. And what hurts is not just losing them. What hurts is how unfinished all of it feels. Your mind keeps replaying everything. You look back at old moments. You wonder if whatever the fuck they said during that relationship, they actually meant it. You start trying to read between the lines. But one of the most hardest truths that I had to learn was this. Not every answer comes in words. It comes in behavior. Watch for behaviors. If somebody had the chance, listen, if somebody had the chance to be clear with you and they chose confusion, that told you something. If somebody had the chance to show up honestly and they still chose distance, that tells you something. If somebody had the chance to give you peace and instead they left you carrying all the emotional aftermath by yourself, that tells you something. And I know that's not the answer people want to hear. Shit, that's not the shit that I wanted to hear at the time, bro. People want closure to be this beautiful final conversation where everybody gets to say what they need to say and both people can walk away with understanding. Sometimes that happens, but most times, no, sir. It's not the case, my butter. It's not the case. A lot of times closure is not beautiful. A lot of times closure is accepting something you never wanted to accept. That the silence is the answer. That the avoidance is the answer. That the inconsistency is the answer. That the lack of effort is and was the answer. And once you really start to understand that, your healing starts to change. Because now you stop waiting for a speech, bro. You stop waiting for that perfect final moment. You stop waiting for them to come back with the emotional maturity they didn't have when they left. And think about it, bro. If a situation happened and they showed you their character in that situation, unless they didn't come back to fix that in about a week or something like that, bro, they're showing you who they really are and how they really feel about things. And that's when the healing can actually begin. Because healing gets delayed every time you make your peace depend on somebody else's honesty. And that's really the whole center of this conversation. A lot of people stay stuck not because they still want the person necessarily, but because they're still waiting for permission to move on. They're waiting for an apology that makes their pain feel seen. They're waiting for an explanation that makes the ending feel less cold. They're waiting for the conversation that makes what happened feel more respectful than what it was. But sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is to stop asking life for a cleaner ending than the one that you got. That's hard because we romanticize closure. But honestly, acceptance is what frees you. Acceptance that not everybody is going to explain themselves. Accept that some people leave confusion behind and keep moving. Accept that you may never get the truth in the form that you wanted. And acceptance does not mean you approve of what happened. It just means you stop fighting reality. That's the difference. You can still feel hurt. You can still feel that disappointment that you felt, bro. You can still feel like you deserve better. But acceptance says, this happened the way it happened. I may not like it, but I'm done begging the past to become something else. That's strength. Because after a while, bro, waiting for closure starts to feel like self-betrayal. At first, it feels understandable, but eventually it turns you into keeping your life emotionally paused for somebody who already moved on from the situation in their own way. And at some point, you gotta ask yourself, how long am I gonna let somebody's inability to communicate control my healing? How long am I gonna let their distance keep me stuck? How long am I going to keep giving emotional authority to somebody who already showed me they couldn't handle it? Those questions matter because closure is not always a conversation. Sometimes closure is a decision to say, I've seen enough, I've felt enough, I've waited enough. I do not need one more explanation to know that this shit hurt me. And I do not need one more apology to know that I deserve peace. That's real closure. And I honestly think people underestimate how much self-respect is actually involved in that, because it takes self-respect to say, you may never explain it, you may never apologize, you may never give me an ending that I deserve, but I'm not putting my life on pause waiting for you to become somebody that I needed you to be. That's growth. And sometimes hope is the thing that keeps people stuck. Not all hope is healthy. Sometimes hope is just resistance. Resistance to the truth. Resistance to the ending. Resistance to accepting that this story may never feel complete. But some stories don't. And your job is not always to get that missing page back, bro. Sometimes your job is to keep writing without it. That's what healing really is. Not understanding every detail. Not getting every answer that you want. Not hearing everything that you deserve to hear. Sometimes healing is just releasing the need to. So if you're somebody who's been waiting on closure, I want you to hear this very clearly. You're not weak for wanting it. You're not dramatic for needing clarity. And you're not crazy for wishing that the relationship ended with more honesty and more respect. But at some point, you do have to decide that your life deserves to continue, even if the ending never got cleaned up. And you do have to realize that sometimes that closure was already there. It just didn't come in the form that you wanted it to come in. It came in silence. It came in distance. It came with the inconsistency. It came in a way that they left you to figure shit out alone. And maybe that's the hardest closure of all. But it's still closure if you let it be. Closure is not always hearing the truth. Sometimes closure is just accepting the truth. And once you do that, bro, you slowly stop waiting. You stop revisiting it every day. You stop negotiating with the past. And little by little, you begin to leave it too. If this hit you though, let me know in the comments what lines stay with you the most. And if you're dealing with an ending that never got fully explained, I just want you guys to know this. You can still heal. You can still move forward. And you can still find peace. Even without the conversation. Even without the apology. Even without the closure that you thought you needed. Because sometimes peace begins the moment you stop waiting for people to explain the pain that they left behind. You already know who it is though. It's Q Garçons. I'm back with these videos. We outside. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to see y'all in the next one.